in our focus on education, we are going to have a discussion on financing of higher education. We have three experts with us today speaking on this topic. We have Professor Mridula Sharma, who is an expert in the financing of higher education. She has written papers as well as book on the financing of higher education. So we'll get the expert view on financing of higher education. We have Professor J.L. Azad, who has been involved in planning commission and closely involved in financing of education and higher education, particularly at the planning commission level, and subsequently he has extensively written on the financing of higher education with regard to the WTO and other latest development in the area of education. We have also Professor Savadatti, who has been member of University Grants Commission as well as Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University. He has been on the receiving end of less amount of finances being given by the state. He is also amount of money required for the development of university. He has a first-hand experience both as a Vice Chancellor of a university as well as a member of the commission which allocates fund for the development of the higher education. We are going to a discussion on this. I'll request the panelists that they make the brief presentation on the topic.
The first fundamental question which occurs to me is why at all there is the importance of financing of higher education in India and in general in the world. The importance of financing of higher education arises because in a democratic country like India, where we have the private initiatives, we also give autonomy to the users of the finances, that is the universities and colleges. The financing works as a very effective tool to control the type of education or to control the quality and the quantity of education which is required to achieve our goals. To put it in another way, if the education is planned in a proper way, it can really become very useful and effective tool, or it can lead to the desired economic development of a country. Now, how it is possible? We have to have a comprehensive plan at the national level. What type of education is required? What quality of education is required? What should be the structure of education? That will be decided. What values are attached by the policy makers, the planners, economic values, social values and the professional values. That will determine whether more funds should go to the tertiary education or the middle level education or the primary education. Are we interested in producing more professionals or we want to spend more on general education? Once these decisions are taken, then these decisions are transmitted at the state level where the universities and colleges they function. Now, on the basis of that, the funds are allocated. Now, how financing affects? It affects through liberal finances and through the controlled finances. The type of education, the quality of education, the structure of education which we want to promote, the finances could be liberal. But if we want to have some control in a particular type of education, the finances could be controlled, and that is how the financing works as a lever. Now, this is possible if we have a very effective planning of education. How that is possible? There are certain efficient criteria of financing. One is adequacy, timely availability of funds, equity, autonomy and flexibility. Adequacy means once our goals are decided, then the sufficient amount should be provided to the educational institution to achieve those goals. Timely availability is a very important function. What happens? The red tapeism, even the funds are sufficient, they are not made available to the institutions on time. As a result, the whole educational planning gets affected. Equity means horizontal equity and vertical equity. The institutions of similar type should be given similar grants, and institutions of different type should be given the different amount of grants. Then autonomy and flexibility go together. Once a certain amount is fixed, then efficiency criteria requires that the institution should be given autonomy and flexibility within the given objectives to use the finances. Then on what basis the grants in aid or the financing in India takes place? There are basically three methods. deficit, incremental and ad hoc. Deficit is basically none of these criteria are very scientific. Deficit is given whatever is the last year grant, some percentage is added depending on the influence of the authorities of those who are receiving the grants, and then the grant is given. Incremental is again on the basis of the last year grant 5%, 15%, 16%, some increment is made and the grants. Ad hoc is a very, the institutions which receive grants on ad hoc basis, they are in the most difficult situation, because once the grant is fixed, then for years together there is no change in the grant, the development takes place, many new courses come, but the amount of grant remains same. As a result, the whole functioning of the institutions get affected.
The criteria which has been laid down by Mridula, I think most of the financing system of Indian higher education does not fulfill that criterion. My own studies, which have been going on for the last so many years, reveal that so far as the finances are concerned, financing of higher education is concerned, it has been a meteoric rise and then fall and fall. Because right from the first plan, say 9% of the total outlay for education was given for higher education, and it went up to 25% in the fourth plan. I call it a honeymoon period, because at that time higher education means general education plus technical education got about 40% of the total outlay for education. After that it has been a fall and fall. It went down to 14%, it went down to, and it has stabilized itself at 8 and 9% in the 9th and 10th plan. So this is what has happened. Overall outlay for higher education in response to the total outlay has also been fall. Say in the first plan it was 0.7%, it went up to 1.2% in the fourth plan, and it has come down again to 0.5%. There is an intervention of the inflation. Say if we consider the per student cost in 1950-51, and if we consider it now, and if we on account of inflation, it is just the same. That is, we are spending just that much amount which we were spending in 1950-51. We have been talking of globalization. Now globalization has come in a big way. I don't criticize globalization because this is a phenomena world over. We can't, it is irreversible, we can't resist it. But what is the effect? The effect is good and bad. It is lights and shades. The lights are that we will have international organizations coming to India, we will have exchange of scholars, we will have number of other benefits. Our universities will have that kind of good impact. But what is the bad effect, mal effect? The mal effect is that our universities will not be able to compete in the world market, and therefore the universities coming from outside will dictate what kind of courses are to be introduced in our system, or introduced by them. And mostly profiteering and commercialization will take place. So this is one thing which we have to guard against, that we must not allow our university system to be impacted adversely by this globalization. Then the other thing is that privatization. Privatization is also coming in a very big way. It started with 8th plan. In 8th plan is 1992-97. The plan said that opening of new universities and conventional colleges should be discouraged. Involvement of voluntary agencies in opening of and conduct of colleges should be encouraged. Then they also introduced the phenomena of self-financing colleges, self-financing courses. But there was a rider that the quality of education should not suffer. I don't really know how, When we introduce all this, then the quality will not suffer. Now, the World Bank has been insisting that we should have some kind of privatization, private participation, and now what did the World Bank base their proposal on? That was on the rate of return studies. For 20 years we have been fed on this formula that we should privatize, we should, because higher education, the rate of return is not that much, and we should promote primary education. Nobody disputes that primary education should be promoted, but yet it should not be at the cost of higher education. So I think very fortunately the World Bank has been better advised by its own committee. Very recently, about 4 or 5 years back, they said that rate of return studies are not the answer. Now, what did they say? I will just mention. The task force of the World Bank has challenged the rate of return studies, which treat educated people as valuable only through their higher earnings and greater tax revenues extracted by society. But educated people have many other effects on society. Educated people are well positioned to be economic and social entrepreneurs, etc. Now they have given the argument, and I hope that World Bank will be better advised. So this is what has happened under the garb of globalization and privatization. What I suggest is that we should insist on private participation. Private bodies have contributed a lot to Indian education, right? Not only from now on, but from the days immemorial. Now we have introduced a loan scheme in India, which I think does not at all fulfill the criterion of any assistance to the students. It is just a commercial type of business which the banks have introduced. Then private donations. Now here I would say that users of technical manpower should be taxed, the industry, because the universities train the manpower and give them on a platter to these industrial houses. So why shouldn't they contribute to this? Then one word about capitation fee colleges. I think some years back I had written about these capitation fee colleges, and it was published in the Hindu. And I had made out a case that capitation fee colleges which are charging enormous amounts and also almost selling their seats to the eligible and non-eligible students should be regulated. So this is about capitation fee colleges. Self-financing colleges also come into that category, and we should not allow commercialization to take place. That is the sum total of my argument, that no commercialization should take place in the case of higher education. And lastly, avoiding wastage. There is a lot of waste that occurs in the system, and we should really, there should be fiscal discipline, there should be maximum utilization of our infrastructure, and number of other things that we can think of.
Certainly it is a very relevant topic and an urgent topic also to think about financing of higher education. And Mridula has really focused on the issues of adequacy and availability, equity, autonomy. And Professor Azad has given us the international scene and what the Planning Commission has done. And certainly, financing is the thing which governs almost everything that we do. As you very rightly said, at the receiving end, we find, in addition to what all has been said, one more thing is important. In addition to financing, we have to take into financial management in the universities or financial management in the higher education itself. For instance, one of the impressions I got is, whenever money is available, it is a fixed money that comes, because we don't have infinite amount of money, whether it is the government giving or whether from whatever source we collect. Therefore, there should be set of priorities, and as it was pointed out earlier by Dr. Sharma himself, that there should be goals. And to me it appeared in the entire interaction with higher education, the goal should be to produce quality, value-based, educated people. That is what is needed. Because quality alone isn't adequate for society to survive. We do need some value-based thing also there, because as Professor Azad very rightly pointed out, it should become commercialized if we emphasize quality only. So to bring in this, universities do require some financial management skills in the university. How do we put our priorities? For instance, in many universities I saw as commission member, most of the money they would spend on building buildings, their usage is hardly 20% of the time, and for about the remaining time they are not used. And the most interesting thing I noticed was they wouldn't have money to maintain them after 5 years of their building them. That means financial management is an aspect which is totally left out. And secondly, I felt, being on both the sides, a very interesting phenomena. Only I am highlighting, all of you must be aware also, what is happening is universities seem to think it is the business of the government to supply the money they want, and they are not accountable for management of the money they receive after placing priorities. That is a very important thing that is missing. What are the priorities? How do we use the money? And this is one point I think which needs attention. And the second thing that is very important here is, why does this happen? In the system, we put in people who are not chosen for the expertise that is needed there. We appoint people as vice chancellors who may not have the skill to manage the various aspects including finance. Then we bring finance officers who do not understand the higher education system and what are its priorities. But still they would like to quote the rules which make it difficult to operate and difficult to optimize the results. This is the second problem that we have. Then we have got the various structures in the universities like academic council, the syndicate and all that, on which we have got people who are very influential but not enlightened in higher education, who do not understand the goals of higher education, which results in bringing in people who do not use even the project money that is given by UGC in what I would call a way which would enhance the quality of education or will at least serve the purpose for which the money has been taken. If you put all these together, along with financing, I think we may have to introduce one more component. Financial management also should be, I think, part of the discussion, so that in any country we have to accept the basic fact. I do accept that we should have 6% of GNP kept for education. I do accept at least about 20% of the education budget should be given to higher education. But at the same time, management, if given priority, then what could happen is whatever we build as infrastructure should be able to be flexible and usable in the optimum way. And if we don't use it in the optimum way, we will have the problem of what I would call not planning how do we spend the money we receive and how do we spend it very effectively. Therefore, I do feel if we can do that also, it would be a highly effective way of not only financing, but using the finances that one gets. Thank you very much.
I think these are a few issues which we have been deliberated, but many of us feel that the education is an important instrument for the social, economic and political development. It is very important. And the future, when the knowledge society, we are working for the knowledge society, a large number of people have to be school educated, that is after 12 years of education, and similarly a large proportion of persons have to be higher educated. Within that there should be large number of persons who are professionally engineer, doctor, other information communication technology person, biotechnology person educated and engaged in R&D. Unless that objective is achieved, will not be achieved the objective. Then resources have to be mobilized for this purpose. This issue remains very important. How we should go, where industry, some other points has been raised by Professor Azad and Dr. Sharma, that particularly who are the users of the educated people. I know in some of the CIS countries, the full cost is borne by the employer of a graduate. A technical graduate comes, then they say we'll pay the full cost of this, because after that he has to serve our industry for a certain period of time. That sort of policy is also followed by some of the CIS countries, that is the erstwhile Soviet countries, and now they are independent countries. They are using. In some cases, you find Finland and other places they are charging very high fees. So there is in the world also, this is a scenario which is taking place, a kind of different viewpoint. Japan is charging very high. Korea is also started. On the other side, many other countries, USA is not charging that high from the student, and they are having several subventions in terms of supporting the poor student, deserving student, fellowship, or the people can work and earn money and at the same time pay fees, etc. All those support systems are there. That's why you find USA almost 86% of the people in eligible age group, that is 20-24, are going for higher education. And if we want to be in the knowledge society, compete in the globalized world with this, we have to expand higher education. That's the issue.